Okay. Yes, we are recording. Hello and welcome to this show that has no name because this is not a Q&A video. Maybe this could be called Aquarium Studies Episode 1 or something. And yesterday, I recorded a Q&A video where I made the threat, and not an idle one, of doing a video about my aquarium because people have actually expressed curiosity and interest in my aquarium. And I've expressed a lot of interest in my own aquarium. It's really just fascinating to me, partly as a meditation, which I guess is one of the most Buddhist aspects of keeping an aquarium, is like the meditative aspect. Of course, if a fish dies or something, there's also the reflection on impermanence and death. But I think this video is going to be more biology than Buddhism. Just offhand, I would be guessing that. And I got this for my birthday over a month ago. So this aquarium has been set up for a little over a month now. Although not everything in here has been in here for more than a month. There's some of the plants and one of the fish have been in here for about 10 days. And then also there's some shrimp that I put in here just yesterday that you're probably not going to see in the video because they are hiding. I thought I was going to get these shrimp, and unlike amphipods that are like burrowed and hiding and stuff and come out at night, I figured the shrimp would just be like climbing up and down the plants and like pecking at algae and eating biofilm and so that kind of stuff, and they just are hiding under the leaves. I even checked my aquarium filter to see if they got sucked up into the filter. No shrimp there. There's no shrimp in the sump behind the main tank. So they got to be in there. I'm pretty sure the fish didn't eat any of them, but they hide really good, which is probably the way their ancestors lived in their natural habitat. You know, back when they were just like brown freshwater shrimp in Asia, they probably spent most of their time just hiding, just so they wouldn't get eaten by fish. And apparently they don't trust the fish in my aquarium, even though my fish will not eat shrimps, maybe like little baby ones, but we'll get to that. So I've been wanting to have an aquarium for many years. I remember I was hoping to get an aquarium before I became a monk, and then I couldn't really keep an aquarium because I was working on ships. So I'd be gone for like 3 months at a time. Can't really keep an aquarium unless, you know, you've got somebody there feeding the fish and all that, which wasn't the case with me. And so even like when I first became a monk, it would just wreck my meditation sometimes. I'd be thinking about, if I had an aquarium, you know, what kind of fish would I put in it? That kind of thing. And since then, I have to say my whole concept of keeping an aquarium has evolved to a whole different level. One reason for that is that, I mean, I've explained this in the Q&A also, so this is like review before the big excitement of actually seeing a close-up of the aquarium. But there was this company that sold what were called biospheres. And they were just a glass ball, it was hollow and completely sealed off. No air could get in or out, no water, anything. The only thing that could get it in or out would be like light and heat, plus, you know, neutrinos and stuff. And inside this little glass ball was a little bit of sand, which for some reason was necessary. You had to have that little bit of sand in there. It had salt water, maybe seawater, but it was probably sterilized seawater. And it had a little bit of like seaweed and some shrimp and some air at the top. And it was completely balanced ecosystem. You know, the shrimp would feed on the algae, the seaweed, and then they would pee and poop, which would then become fertilizer for the seaweed. So it was just like this perfectly balanced system. And this little ball, even though you couldn't feed the shrimp or anything, couldn't fertilize the plant, still, I mean, it could last for years and years. So when my birthday was coming around, I was thinking about getting one of those, and they went out of business apparently recently. They have some really cheap fake imitations for sale on Amazon, but I didn't want to go for that. So my next choice, plan B, was to get an aquarium and then try and set up the aquarium pretty much like one of those biospheres, like a balanced ecosystem, although it'd be a much more complex one. You know, it'd be more than one species of animal, more than one species of plant. Plus there'd be a whole bunch of like microfauna, like protozoans and bacteria and so forth. But as it turns out, I made a mistake right off the bat. I got the aquarium, which is, I think it's 32 gallons, a 32-gallon aquarium, but that would probably, I think that doesn't include what's behind the wall, like in the sump area. And it was originally designed to be mainly a saltwater aquarium. It's called a BioCube, but I'm using it with fresh water and it seems to work fine, so that's no problem. But the thing is, I didn't really start studying up on ecosystem aquariums, like balanced natural aquariums, until after I had already put the sand in, like set up the substrate. And then I start looking on YouTube and I find Father Fish, my new guru. And Father Fish says you're supposed to put like a ½ inch to an inch of soil under the sand so that when you plant plants in your aquarium, the roots go down and they get nutrients, especially at first. Eventually the nutrients will be depleted, but by then you're going to have like a food web and an ecosystem already going. It'll be a stable system. So I didn't do that. So I've got this challenge of I'm going to have to create my own soil, which is going to be done mainly by the fish pooping and like dead leaves. And I've been putting extra dead leaves, like from trees. One of the things that Father Fish says is as soon as you set up your aquarium, you go out to a pond or a stream and you find dead leaves that are in the water, like waterlogged, kind of blackish leaves, and you take those back and you put them in your aquarium, because all the microfauna, the bacteria, the protozoans, the fungi that are part of a balanced ecological system are on those leaves, and just like little sticks and that kind of thing. And it looks good. It makes it look more natural, but also it's setting up just a balanced, like a biologically diverse system. And it is, a lot of people who keep aquariums, they have problems where something just infests the whole aquarium. It just goes out of balance. They'll just have some sort of parasite just runs amok, or, some kind of species of life will just explode and just wreck their aquarium. I almost said tank their aquarium, but that would be a bad pun. And one of the reasons for that, why a lot of aquariums will just get out of balance and just crash, is that you don't have an ecological balance. The way it works is you get something starts to multiply, then you've got something else that feeds on that starts to multiply and then causes the original population to go back down again. And so there's this balancing act going on, which is the way ecosystems work. And an aquarium is essentially just a miniature encapsulated little ecosystem, kind of a microcosm. So I guess, I don't have a script, so I'm just sort of like doing this impromptu. And so it's not going to be very structured, but I might as well just detach the camera from the computer at this point and try and see if we can do this. So this is my aquarium. It's, like I said, like a 32-gallon it's essentially a cube of water. And here's the substrate that, I should have put soil at the bottom of this. This is just like coarse sand. And you can probably see like a greenish tinge there, which is a little bit of algae, maybe some brownish tinge, which is probably also algae, like diatoms. And just rocks for habitat diversification so that little creatures can hide under there and the fish won't eat all the little creatures. Also got some dead leaves. That particular leaf I got out of a stream, I'm pretty sure. This leaf over here, I actually paid money for this. I ordered a microfauna culture from Phillips Fishworks, which is inoculated. Like most of these dead leaves in here have been inoculated with microfauna. So not only lots of different kinds of bacteria and fungi, but protozoans like paramecium, stentor, little rotifers, gastrotrix, tardigrades. I mean, search for an image of tardigrade on Google and you'll see what a bizarre little creature it is. Also, there's some little crustaceans like copepods that I've seen very little of this. Most of it is so small that it's microscopic. But most of the rest of it that isn't microscopic has to hide because, of course, these fish will eat any kind of little creature that they see. So I suppose I should discuss the fish here. The main fish are in there, the red ones, are cherry barbs. And I'm going with an Asian motif in my aquarium. So most of the species of plants and animals originally come from Asia. These cherry barbs come from Sri Lanka. And they're very nice. They're really bright red one. There's 3 really bright red ones. I got a little school of 10 of them. The 3 really bright red ones are males. And the females are more of sort of a reddish color. That's a female right there. I don't know if this is focused or what. It looks semi-focused right there. So that bright red one was a male. And let's see, that one is a female dwarf gourami named Kreka. And she's got kind of a strange story because pet shops and aquarium stores almost never sell female dwarf gouramis. See if I can find the male. The male's in here too somewhere. No, he's in the back there. That blue guy in the back there. Kind of right next to the water bubbles. Oh, the hornwort lifted up. Where is he? Right in there. Anyways, he'll come to the front eventually. But aquarium stores, fish stores, they sell only male dwarf gouramis. It's very rare to find a female dwarf gourami. And I'm not exactly sure why that is. It could be that they're just trying to keep a monopoly on breeding dwarf gouramis or something. Or it may be that Father Fish actually answered a question of mine asking about this. And he's saying that most dwarf gouramis come from Asia and that there might be some kind of law against selling female dwarf gouramis because then they might breed and become invasive or something. But, and then also a guy at the fish store says they usually just, because the female dwarf gouramis are just sort of like a brownish color, just really a bland color. And she's hiding because she's camera shy, apparently. And the males are the really colorful ones. And so they just sell males just because the males are colorful. The females are just drab. And so they just use the females to feed the, whatever other kind of large predatory fish that they're also breeding. So eventually I found a place online that sells female dwarf gouramis. And so I ordered 2 of them and they came in the mail. Both of them were alive. I asked if they could to give me cobalt blue females because my male is cobalt blue. Probably in retrospect, I should have just got wild type because wild type fish, they might not be as pretty, but they're healthier as a general rule, more vigorous, more resistant to disease and so forth because they've been adapted by nature instead of being adapted artificially by humans that mess things up, like dog breeds, for example. You get fancy show dogs, they're prone to all kinds of diseases. They have all these health problems. That's Attila right there, the male dwarf gourami. So at considerable expense and trouble, I finally was able to find a place where I could order him his soulmate. And I ordered 2 of them. One of them was a wild type, and the other one was cobalt blue. And I have no idea how they fed these things, how they feed their gouramis, because when I would feed them, the 2 new females that were introduced to the tank like 10 days ago, they just never figured out feeding time. They just would just ignore the food that I'd put in there. And what happened was the cobalt blue female dwarf gourami, who was blue, not as blue as this guy, but still you could tell that she was not wild type. I mean, she just starved. She just would not eat. But the other one, the wild type, who is in the bushes hunting right now, I mean, that's what she does. I mean, I haven't fed this female dwarf gourami a single flake, a single pellet, a single freeze-dried tubifex worm, because she is foraging in these plants all the time, just pecking at biofilm and little creatures, maybe eating a little bit of algae also. And she just doesn't need food, and she is fat. She's fatter than the male, who does really like the feeding time issue. And she's like in the plant somewhere. Oh, there she is. I don't know if you can, she's kind of behind the hornwort over there. Let's see if I can, the current is not cooperating. Yeah, well, she'll come to the front eventually. So, yeah, I do have a mated pair, I guess. Well, they haven't actually mated yet. They haven't reproduced yet. But Kreka, she is a sign that even though the food web is not really visible, that nevertheless, she is finding enough food in this aquarium that I do not have to feed the female dwarf gourami. And most of the food, even from these cherry barbs, most of the food that all of the fishes are eating in here is probably just they're foraging for it. Because you inoculate the tank with microorganisms, protozoans, little worms, and so forth. And these fish are just doing their natural thing that they would do in the wild, and just foraging and hunting around for little creatures and eating that, plus eating biofilm. And biofilm, if you're not familiar with it, is just like that slippery layer that everything gets when you keep it in water. It's mostly bacteria and also like little protozoans and so forth. And some fish species just specialize in eating that. With regard to these cherry barbs, I lucked out. I mean, I really didn't know what they liked and what they didn't like when I first got them. I just always kind of liked cherry barbs and wanted to get some. And it turns out that they are omnivores, so they spend a lot of time just hunting around, pecking at stuff. Instead of like some fish, it's good to get an idea of what they feed on and what kind of habitat they live on before you get them. For example, some fish, they're evolved or adapted to living in ponds with still water. Other fish, like gobies, for example, are specialized in living in fast flowing water, so they like having a current. Some kind of fish, like African cichlids, in the wild, they feed largely on algae, but also supplement their diet with insects that fall onto the surface of the lakes that they live in. And so I just kind of lucked out with cherry barbs that just feed on, I mean, they're just omnivores. They just forage around in the plants, looking for anything they can. And apparently they're finding it, because I really don't feed them very much. Like if you look at the container of fish food, if you get a little container of flakes or something, it'll say, oh, feed them like 3 times a day or something. But I feed these fish maybe once every 2 days, which is still more than Father Fish says you should do. Father Fish says once you get the food web set up, you don't need to feed your fish at all. But just for the joy of feeding them, so you can get some mudita, some joy at their happiness at getting food. You know, you can feed them like once every 2 weeks. But it's not really necessary. And already, even though this aquarium is not really a mature aquarium yet, like I said, the female dwarf gourami, she doesn't get fed. She's not interested in food that I feed to her. There she is back in the, well, you can't see her. There she is. She's like hunting for little creatures and just eating biofilm from that hornwort right there. So I suppose I should, also, I don't know if you're going to be able to see them, but I have one more species of fish in here, which is Otocinclus, which is an algae eater. It is important to have something that feeds on detritus and algae in particular to help keep the aquarium clean. And they are my laps from an Asian motif, because they come from South America. And I'll try and find one. There aren't any towards the front. There's one that always hangs out behind the heater, so let's see if we can find him. Let's see here. I guess I should keep it upright. Is that him? Yeah. That's an otocinclus right there. Not a very good view of him, but there's one. I got 3 of them in this tank, and one of them pretty much always hangs out behind the heater over there. And the heater is never really turned on. It just uses it as a convenient hiding place. The other ones are usually behind the water wisteria in the back. So I guess I should mention my plants now. And this frondy thing, this monstrosity here, is hornwort. And technically it's not native to Asia originally. It comes from North America, but it is so invasive that it's all over the world now. It's on every continent in nature except for Antarctica probably. And it can grow more than an inch a day. And I'd have had somewhat of a problem with excess of algae. So hornwort, it doesn't have roots, and so it gets all of its nutrients from the water, and so it can suck the nutrients out of the water, which then inhibits algae growth. So that's one of the main reasons why I got it. But also it's an excellent habitat because it's so frondy like this, that small creatures can hide in this stuff. And if the fish start reproducing, then the baby fish can also hide in the fronds of this and avoid being eaten by the larger fish. So below the hornwort, this stuff, you can see there's algae growing on the leaves. That's a species of Anubias. And fortunately, the algae hasn't gotten any worse over the past week, so maybe it's stabilizing, it's reaching some kind of equilibrium. But this kind of plant, Anubias, it's named Anubias after Anubis, the Egyptian god of death and the underworld. And the reason they named it that is because it can grow practically in the dark. It needs some light, but it can grow in the shade really well. And if it gets too much light, then you got algae starting to grow on the leaves, which is what has happened here. But it is growing well. I've got 2 new leaves there that have almost no algae. And it's a nice plant, although it's not as good for habitat as something like hornwort because little creatures can't really hide on it very well. Then I got like a Java fern over here that's not really doing much. It's like a ghetto aquarium plant that I got from Petco, and it hasn't been doing very much. I've got another Java fern over here, which is growing a little better, but it's just sort of there just for the hell of it. This is a crip, that little plant with the little plants, the little leaves there. I don't remember exactly what kind that is, but I'm pretty sure it comes from Asia. And my original idea was to have the back of my aquarium mostly this stuff that's over in the corner here. This is water wisteria. And it supposedly grows really well, although mine's been growing maybe 1/4 of an inch a day. And it's also kind of frondy, and it's prettier than the hornwort. It's less of a problem than hornwort. So little animals can hide in the fronds of this stuff too. And the cherry barbs especially really like water wisteria. They hang out in that a lot. And then right in the middle in the back there is bacopa, which I think comes from India. And it's sort of getting infested with some kind of algae too. And one of the reasons why I got the little shrimps that are now invisible was hoping that they would be climbing up and down the plants and like feeding off the algae. And maybe they're doing it at night, but the main algae eaters are the snails. And let's see, that guy there climbing up the walls, that's Leroy Jenkins. And I've had him for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and he is already twice as big as he was when I got him. I'm deliberately leaving algae on the side glass, just cleaning the front glass just so that they'll have more food to eat, because snails eat mainly detritus and algae. And also, I mean, algae itself is a plant, and it indicates that you've got a healthy aquarium because algae is life. And so when you've got lots of algae, that means that your aquarium is supporting lots of life. And also plants help in the cycle where they take fish waste, like nitrogenous metabolic waste, and that's fertilizer for them. So they're taking the waste out of the water and cleaning it. In fact, this hornwort stuff is used at water treatment centers, in some places, to just help remove the toxins from water, because it just absorbs it as fertilizer. It turns into hornwort and it's gone from the water. This snail over here, over by the thermometer, that's Righteous Fist of Apocalyptic Chaos. He is full size. He's not growing anymore. Leroy Jenkins is catching up to him now. And then also, let's see, where is the other one? I've got a little nerite snail, like a zebra nerite snail in here somewhere, but I don't know exactly where it is. But I've also got two of these little seed pod things. It's like a sweet gum seed pod. And the Phillips Fishworks included these with the cultured leaves, because not only do small creatures live in the little crevices of those, but they also feed on them and help it to break down and turn into nutrients. According to Father Fish, they've done like biological studies that indicate that the average freshwater system, like a pond or a stream, the main food intake, or the main source of food, of energy and nutrients for the system, comes from dead leaves that fall from the trees. And so, like, the ecosystem is largely based on decaying vegetable matter at the bottom, which then feeds bacteria and fungi, which then feeds protozoans, which then feeds tiny creatures like copepods and rotifers and nematode worms, which then eventually feed the fish. And then the fish poop and pee, and then it just fertilizes the plants, and then the plant leaves die, and the whole system remains in balance. So this is pretty much where I wanted to get it. I mean, it's doing fairly well. I like the plants to get bigger so that it's more jungly. And I might add a few more fish later. I'm seriously considering getting an amphipod culture, especially now that the shrimp that were supposed to be crawling up and down the plants in plain sight, very ornamentally and helpfully, they're all hiding like in this leaf litter. That's where they have to be. I don't know where else they would be other than hiding here. I've checked the sump, I've checked the filter. They're not there. I put 8 in there yesterday, and they are nowhere to be seen today. And I'm pretty sure these fish didn't eat them. A cherry barb is not going to eat a shrimp that's half as big as it is. They're restricted to small, very small creatures. Like a baby shrimp they would eat, but the size of shrimp that I got in there, more than half of an inch long, they're not going to bother with. But the shrimp don't know that, and so that's why they're hiding. So I guess that's pretty much the update. I got a little piece of zucchini, raw zucchini there, unnecessarily, but I figured it might be something that the shrimp might come out for to eat, but they haven't done it yet. They haven't come out at all. They're very uncooperative. And so this is pretty much my aquarium as it stands today. And as I was saying, one of the most dharmic things about a fish tank, other than reflections on impermanence and death, is it is a kind of very nice meditation. You can reduce stress, you can just decompress, you just sit in front of a fish tank and watch the little fishes just gliding around in silence, which is nice. And these cherry barbs may actually reproduce in here. I didn't really mention how they reproduce. They're cyprinid, which means they belong to the carp family, or the carp order. And they just go at it and lay eggs and just scatter them around on the ground. And then probably most of them get eaten by something or other. But a few, I hope, they'll hatch, and then they'll start hanging out in stuff like this hornwort and eating the biofilm and microfauna there. So you don't have to feed the baby fish any special diet or anything. They just find it in here, just like Kraka, the female dwarf gourami, who is, well, there's Attila. Say hi, Attila. There he is. I don't know how focused this is. But yeah, Kraka, I mean, she's always just back in the plants, foraging. And like I said, she doesn't care about mealtime. She doesn't eat flakes. She doesn't do flakes. She doesn't give a shit about flakes. But I don't see her now. She's back there somewhere, always back in the bushes. So anyways, because I am so fascinated by this, and because my lovely mate, my woman, also loves animals much as I do, and she used to keep an aquarium. She mainly specialized in African cichlids. I inspired her to get an aquarium too, and I might as well show that before we end this. Let's see. Oh, that's still Leroy Jenkins right there. There's Leroy right there. Leroy Jenkins. And I still do not see Righteous Fist of Maniacal Fury anywhere. Maybe if I come back in a few minutes. So let's just go look at my woman's aquarium, which is still being set up. There's no fish in it yet. So let's see, we go over this way. There's the dog. And then we go over this way. There's the beverage. Okay. So this is my lovely mate's aquarium. And she knew about father fish before she put down her substrate. So you can see it's like a layer of soil underneath. Maybe you can't see it very well, but there is a layer of soil. And so her plants that she planted relatively recently are just taking off. Once the roots reach down into that layer of soil, it's growing really well. Her hornwort, I gave her one strand of my hornwort, and it's already reached the top of the water. Her water wisteria, I gave her a couple of extras from mine that I got in the mail at the same time as the dwarf gouramis. They're already bigger than mine. The thing on the chopstick there is a piece of zucchini, because she really doesn't have much of a food web going yet. And so she's got 8 shrimp that she put in here. Also, we inoculated it with some microfauna that I got from Phillips Fish Works. And so because it's not really established with a food web yet, like mine is relatively well, that just putting a little bit of raw zucchini in there. I mean, the snails love it. She's got a few snails, like right there, I think is a mystery snail. I think that's what it's called. And then up there is a nerite snail, similar to Righteous Fist of Maniacal Fury. And she's got different kind of plants. I'm not sure exactly what all these plants are, other than the water wisteria and the hornwort that I gave her. I think that tall stuff is bacopa, like I've got in my aquarium. And this is Anubias with the broad leaves. I don't know what these are. These are little ones. I put some Java moss in there. There's a little bit of Java moss like stuck to that rock, so that can take off. Java moss is hardy, and it's also a really good habitat for microfauna and like baby fish and so forth. Also, she got this black plastic thing is supposed to be like a shrimp tunnel, where you put it up against the edge of the corner of the aquarium, and then the fish, or probably little fish, but also shrimp, can like hang out in this tunnel. But I'm not seeing anything in there other than gravel. But because she doesn't have fish, sometimes if you like stare for minutes at a time, you can eventually see like some little white speck motoring around that's like a copepod that came from the leaf litter. She doesn't have very many leaves in here yet, but there's a good chance she will. And she's starting to landscape it, or aquascape it, the rocks with the holes and so forth. She's more artistic than I am, so eventually I'm experiencing aquarium insecurity, and that eventually her aquarium is going to be more spectacularly beautiful than mine. But I guess I can live with that. And over here, before I finish, there in the windowsill is what is called a resurrection jar. And Father Fish advises everyone who keeps an aquarium to also keep a resurrection jar. And the purpose of that is you go to a pond or a creek and you just get a handful of like decaying vegetation, like leaves and sticks, and you put it in there with some of the creek water or the pond water, and then you just set it in a windowsill for 1 month. And that's been there for like 2 weeks now. And supposedly what happens is all these little creatures just start multiplying. And then eventually you put that into your aquarium where you've got biological diversity and little creatures for the fish to eat and so forth. And so it helps to create a food web and like an ecologically balanced aquarium. Although I really have not found the ideal source for this. I haven't found a good pond yet. There is a little pond just not far from this house, but it's surrounded by people's yards and so forth. And I'm sure that it's just like laced with Roundup, pesticides and so forth. So I don't want to use that. But aside from that, there's a creek not far from here that it seems less polluted, but still it's like I haven't had much luck in like establishing any kind of little community of creatures that are living in the stuff at the bottom. I look, there's some kind of little white worm-like thing that's in there, and that's about it. So eventually, after 1 month to let it like ferment or like germinate or whatever, gestate, then you're supposed to take some of that material, the rotten leaves and so forth, and put them into your aquarium. And a lot of aquarium keepers, they're sold on, you got to use water changes and you got to clean your filter all the time, and putting in all these chemicals to like kill the algae or kill unwanted creatures and so forth. But Father Fish points out that in the wild you've just got all kinds of microorganisms, and then you've got all kinds of like slightly larger organisms feeding on the microorganisms. You have an entire food web, and once you get it going well, you don't need to change the water at all if you don't want to. You don't need to feed the fish. You don't need to have a filter, because these plants, like hornwort especially, that's the filter. That's what's cleaning the water. And you don't have to vacuum the goop off the bottom, because that forms a nutrient-rich soil, which actually adds to the ecosystem. So this is the state that the aquarium is in, and it's probably not going to change very much other than just maturing. The plants will get bigger and become more jungly, and eventually there's just going to be more detritus, decaying vegetable matter down there on the bottom, which eventually is just going to get mixed in with this sand that I've used as a substrate, and just become like a nutritious soil, a nutrient-rich soil, instead of just sand, which is like desert. It's just sort of barren of nutrients almost. But one thing I like about this substrate, this coarse sand, is one of the most important papers I wrote as a biology student at university was about interstitial myofauna, which are little creatures. Interstitial means they live in between grains of sand in the substrate, and myofauna technically means that it's any kind of organism that will go through a 1 millimeter sieve or screen, but will be caught by a 0.1 millimeter sieve or screen. So they're almost microscopic, and they live in between the grains of sand, and they're entire groups of organisms like gastrotrichs that can live in there, rotifers and so forth. So I'm hoping, even though I do no longer own a microscope and can't see them, I've really been regretting not having a microscope lately, because then I can like look at least at the little strange creepy crawlies that should be in there, like the shrimp that should be in there, but I just can't see them. Oh, and that reminds me that there may actually be one more species of fish in this aquarium, because on the day that I got my first cherry barbs, which were the first fish I put in here, I also got 2 coolie loaches, which are like little worm-like eels, and they're bottom feeders. It's good to have some fish that just feed on detritus stuff on the bottom. Although even these cherry barbs do some of that, and the dwarf gouramis do that too. But these coolie loaches specialize in it. And I let them loose in this aquarium, and that's it. I mean, for days and days, I saw nothing of them. Finally, like 2 weeks later, I saw one. And that's it. I've seen them once since the first day I put them in there. I don't know if they're in there at all. Maybe they died and just decomposed or something. There was a video I saw on YouTube of this guy talking about a coolie loach. He runs like an aquarium store. And he was saying that he put a coolie loach in a tank and then just forgot about it. He never saw it. And then years later, after he had forgotten about this loach, he's changing out the tank and he sees something move. And just it's like years later, this fish had been in that aquarium literally for years. And nobody saw it because they just hide under the leaves like the shrimp are doing and like the amphipods are doing, if there are indeed amphipods still in here. I've seen a few in here on the day that I put them in, so I know that some got put in here. And amphipods are a kind of crustacean, small crustacean. There's Kraka, the little huntress, who is actually one of my favorite fishes, even though she's just a plain brown color. But she's definitely wild type, and she's just foraging and gets her own food, which is it's really nice. It at the very least it indicates that this aquarium already does have a food web going, and that's really for me one of the most important things of having this aquarium. I don't want some pristine, crystal clear water and like blue gravel and. Just everything looks like perfectly aquascaped and everything. I'm more interested in just the living system of it. So a little bit of messiness is worth it just to have like a balanced, biologically diverse ecosystem. And so I guess that's it. I guess I can still don't see any algae eaters. Yeah. They're hiding in the back. So I guess you'll just have to wait till later to see the Otocinclus. And there's the dog still. So I'll just put this back onto the computer. Like that. And I guess that's pretty much it. That's the update or the intro to Punyo's Aquarium. And as I say, there is some Dharma in this. It's not all biology or all like fish geek hobbyism. That really just sitting in front of an aquarium and just silently gazing on the fish gliding around, it's really a kind of meditation. Really, it might not get you as deep as jhana or any such thing, but it definitely is just a mild, pleasant kind of meditation. And then, of course, if something dies, you can reflect on death. And so I guess we're done. And so I'll just say, be happy.